I'm curious to know, how expensive do you think an ambulance call out in the US would be? Yes, it can set you back by about $2,500. I can't fathom why an insurance company would charge over $3 million for a transplant. It's perplexing to me how people without insurance manage to cope. How on earth can you even begin to cover such expenses? The bill is already around $80,000. I'm left wondering how I am going to deal with this. I've worked my entire life. And is this how it's going to end? Surprisingly, a few staunch patriots claim, sans evidence, that the American healthcare system is the best globally. This video is for those individuals. Let's dive right in. I'll provide you with a range of statistics and then dig into the problem's root cause. America outspends every other nation on healthcare per person. One would think that this hefty spending would assure the world's best healthcare. Unfortunately, that is far from reality. Despite being the planet's priciest healthcare system, consuming over 16% of our GDP, it is one of the least effective in the developed world. We spend over $10,000 per person on healthcare. But not only is the quality of care underwhelming, we also fail to cover everyone. Compare this to countries like Germany, where significantly less is spent per person on healthcare, and coverage is guaranteed for all citizens. There were over 27 million uninsured Americans in 2018. And this figure would have undoubtedly surged due to recent widespread layoffs. Even before the pandemic, we had more uninsured and underinsured citizens than any other developed country. Aside from not covering a large section of the population, even those with excellent health insurance struggle with medical bills. Over 25% of insured individuals reported having difficulties covering their exorbitant treatment costs. Of this group, 63% depleted most or all of their savings on medical bills, and 42% had to secure a second job. The cost of life-saving drugs in America is often 10 times that in other countries. For instance, a vial of insulin costs $32 in Canada. The same drug, made in the same factory, costs $300 in the US. And this isn't even the worst case. Consider the HIV drug Truvada, which costs only $8 in Australia, compared to $2,000 in the US, despite the development costs being borne by US taxpayers. Every year, over 500,000 people face bankruptcy due to their medical bills. In a country where 40% of the population can't afford a surprise $400 expense, an ambulance ride to the hospital could cost more than double that. And all of this is happening in the richest country in the world. If we have the resources and claim superiority over other countries, why is our healthcare system in such a shambles? Here's the reality. It's not dysfunctional. It's working precisely as intended. America's healthcare system operates on a profit basis. This means they provide care not out of ethical obligations, but because there's a substantial paycheck involved. In the 1930s, Blue Cross and Blue Shield were the main health insurance providers in the US. They operated as non-profits and didn't refuse anyone for any reason. But after World War II, health insurance became a benefit offered by employers. And between 1940 and 1955, the percentage of insured Americans rose from 10% to over 60%. This increased demand for health insurance attracted many business people, and the for-profit healthcare industry was born. By 1951, big names like Aetna and Cigna became significant players in the industry, which continued to grow throughout the 70s and 80s. In the 80s, the country began to see its first for-profit hospitals, owned by large investors who controlled multiple hospital chains. By 1981, 1 in 7 hospitals in the US was for profit. Suddenly, medical bills became longer and more complex. Every little thing was an itemized expense, from tissues to plastic cups, to being allowed to hold your baby after birth. The transition of hospitals from philanthropy to corporate entities was complete. This is not normal in other countries. America took the harsh step of commodifying something sacred, the health and well-being of its citizens. Along with the commercialization of health came unsurprising side effects. The average American life expectancy is lower than other wealthy countries, and has started to decrease in recent years, in contrast to the slow increase seen in other countries. The US has the highest infant and maternal mortality rates of any developed country, and higher rates of medical errors than other countries. Adults in most other comparable countries can access a doctor or nurse quicker when they need care, contrary to what American healthcare advocates might have you believe. In almost every study on the effectiveness of healthcare systems in developed nations, America scores very poorly, often at the very bottom of the list. And other nations have started noticing. At the start of the coronavirus epidemic, a university in Norway urged its students studying in countries with underdeveloped health systems, such as the US, to return home. Part of the problem is America's fixation with streamlining or optimization. Anything that doesn't immediately boost profits is discarded. Consider the practice of so-called just-in-time delivery of essential equipment, like ventilators. Instead of having an emergency stockpile, including personal protective equipment like masks and gloves, these items are delivered only as and when required. This strategy is designed to cut overheads but leaves us utterly unprepared and ill-equipped for a national pandemic. This is why we see images of doctors and nurses wearing trash bags, because their hospitals haven't provided adequate protective gear. And just to be safe, they're firing people who post such pictures. The CDC had planned to address the national ventilator shortage, but the contract was cancelled by a larger company that had bought out the contracted company, as it was not going to be profitable enough. And the name of that larger company? Covidian. I could spend all day citing examples of absurdly high medical bills. However, at the end of the day, some people in America will still defend for-profit healthcare. Perhaps the best way to communicate the message isn't to show them the bills, but to show them what people in other, more sensible countries think of the bills. So here you go. I'll call out how much things cost. 0 payment for your ambulance ride. Inhaler, $100 to $350. 2 EpiPens, $600. The average childbirth cost, about $10,000, can go up to $30,000. It's okay to laugh. It's funny video. Let's hope for good days. Thank you for watching.